Hi, this is Logistics Technology Mindmap, and I'm Marshall Hughes. And hopefully, you've watched the last 9 videos so you know what we're on about. But really, a quick snapshot is that logistics technology decisions can make or break careers and make or break companies. Make a good one and you're a hero, make a bad one and you get blamed for everything that goes wrong for the next 5 years. The goal with this mind map, the videos associated, and the documents I produce is that as you go through the process of making a decision, you don't miss anything that's vital. It's a pretty complex area. There's a lot of three-letter acronyms, really sexy technology, and often some really good trade shows with some good t-shirts and giveaways. So my goal is to help you sort of filter through all that and get to the crux of the issue, which is what is the best technology decision for your logistics company. If you find all this a bit overwhelming or you just want to have a chat, please hit me up at askmarsh.com. Happy to do a free 1 hour strategy session with you, maybe highlight some of the areas you should be focusing on and give you some ideas of where to go from there. So today's video is all about me hitting the right button. Today's video is all about support. It's a pretty complex area, so I'm not going to spend half an hour going through everything. So we'll spend the next maybe 10 minutes or so giving you some of the highlights, and we can talk about things after that. I'm actually going to start with sales support. So sales support is essentially you've chosen the vendor, you've chosen the software or the hardware, and now it's a matter of time making everything happen. Good sales support can make it a great experience for your company. Poor sales support, it can end up ruining the whole experience. And sometimes you never get a second chance with your team members and they'll never adopt the technology you want to introduce. So the key area with sales support is the onboarding. So what onboarding is getting to know, bringing it on board. So what's important with that? It's really simple, training and retraining and champions. So training is getting the information to the right people at the right time in a method they can understand. You're going to have team members that work well with video, others that work well face-to-face, others that just want to read it or study it themselves, and some people who just go, oh, we'll figure it out as we go along. All are totally valid, but you need to make sure that you find the right one for the right team member and make sure that your vendor provides those different opportunities. Retraining is a huge thing. Yep, we thought we knew what it was, but a week in, we don't know what's going on. So from a sales support training point of view, how long does that training period go for? Is it set and forget? You start day one and they forget about you, or will they continue to support you through the process? And a really good key to look for here is look for champions with your own business, people who are charismatic, who are leaders, who other people hold in high regard, and try and grab a couple of those and bring them into the training process. So your good sales tech training should help you identify the champions and really elevate them up a level and make sure they're super users perhaps and they know exactly what they're doing. Another key part of sales support is the transition. Oftentimes you're moving from an old system to a new system, and that old system might have been pen and paper or Excel, or it may have been a really complex dispatch management system, or even some hardware that required a specific set of skills. Just make sure that the sales support for the vendor you've chosen takes you through these steps of planning and management. So who, what, when, where, why, and how. Management, ensuring they're not going to just drop you in it and then run away, start banking the money. So how are they going to guide you through the process? And really, a smart software or hardware vendor should be looking to turn you into a spokesperson or for their business. So they should be providing this stuff. And if they're not going to, that's maybe a sign that maybe it's a little bit harder than what they've said it is. So after transition, we want to look at follow-up. So how do they make sure that you're on the right track? How do they make sure that your team is using everything that is required in the way it's required? And sometimes with some technology you're going to bring in, this might be a 12-month process of ongoing rolling out to different departments, rolling out different functionality as you go along. You also need a good tech vendor that will help you with supplier and customer support. We've talked about that on previous videos, that when your company makes this decision, you're invariably part of a supply chain and your suppliers and your customers need to come along for the journey. So what's your sales support team from the vendor you've chosen? What are they prepared to do to help you promote and push this new change out to your customer and your supplier base? Because again, you don't want to make a bad decision or give people a bad impression of your company because the vendor you've chosen doesn't provide support for you. So that's sales support. So after the sales, obviously comes tech support. Now, this is a hugely complex area, and we're not going to touch on everything today. Again, just some highlights. Tech support is absolutely critical, and don't skimp on it. Don't cut it back unless the software or the hardware you're deploying is stupidly simple and will never break, which doesn't exist. So really, really ensure that the tech support, once you've deployed, once you're through the sales process, and once you become a company using this technology, make sure they are going to look after you. They've made a bucket load of money selling you the stuff. Make sure they earn what they've made, that they continue to support you. So a couple of different areas where it's going to come into. One is the local versus offshore support, typically for software here. I don't mind whether it's local or offshore. What I mind is whether or not it works for me. So if it's local, is it going to be in person or on site? These are the things you can look at. What does it need? What are the requirements? When are you going to need them? So you're going to need them after hours, you're going to need them in the evenings or on weekends. Just be careful that when you're looking at response times, that they're going to look after you when you need it. Also, what's the escalation process? So we don't want to call 1-3-wait or speak to a low-level tech who's just going to bounce us around with other low-level techs. How do we get to someone who can actually help us if we got a proper problem? Good companies now have good systems. Bad companies have tickets that no one actually uses or no one pays any attention to or no one will take responsibility for. So just make sure that the tech support's going to be looking after you ongoing, because we could be talking 3, 5, 7, 10 years. So make sure they're going to look after you for that time. Something here I've talked about is the potential for embedded staff. If this is a really big change and you're a company of size, there may be value of a tech support person actually coming on board as part of your team for a period of time. So whether that's a new hire or an existing hire or a contractor, it may well be worth having your person on the ground, on your sites, wearing your uniform or part of and identifying as one of your team so that they're there for you. But then you need someone who completely understands the system as well. And there's good precedence for doing that. It works quite well, but you're going to be talking a decent enough spend to justify it. Offshore, I've got no problem whatsoever with offshore technical and customer support. The people working in other countries, just because they're not working in yours, doesn't mean they're any less educated or any less capable. But there are some things to look out for. Critical amongst this is the language and cultural understanding. And this isn't the ability to say, "G'day, mate," and ask how well the Bombers are going to go this year. This is understanding that when you say this is a crisis and the place is going to blow up, that the people you are dealing with understand that this is serious. Particularly in logistics, because we do love our jargon, you've got to understand that the language and the understanding is of the local. So in Australia, it's the local cultural understanding, the local language that we use to describe logistics, which will be different to the US. So a freight broker in one jurisdiction is different to a freight broker in the other one. In some countries, they spell dispatch differently. Just make sure that the team that is being used for the tech support understands that, and test them out by calling them or using video chat, whatever it might be. Critical here is to look at the service level agreement around response times. And again, that escalation word will come into it again. Just make sure that whatever you've signed up for, you're going to get. There's huge advantages for tech companies in offering tech support in companies where the wages are a little bit lower, because they can offer more staff for longer periods, which should improve their response time without a degradation in the service level. Should. The other thing you need to look at is access and whether they're dedicated or shared resources. So is the offshore tech support person dedicated to your company or your industry or your site, or are you sharing them with a whole bunch of other people? And when can you get hold of them? And who can you get hold of? So again, if we go from that level 1, level 2, level 3 issue, do you always have to log every query as a level 1 issue? Or if you know that you've already switched it off and switched it back on again, you've already made sure you've got the latest software version, that's 90% of tech calls. You've already done that? Do you still have to go through level 1, level 2, level 3? Just something to look out for. And again, just ask to test it. A really good one here is other companies where we talked about really early in research. So how did you find the tech support? Did it do what you needed it to do? If a conveyor shut down at 10 o'clock at night, could you get someone to fix it when it needed fixing? Which leads me to the last little section of support, which is that 24/7 availability. If you don't need it, don't pay for it. It looks great, 24/7, 365, 52 weeks a year. That's great, but if there's a premium attached to that really high level, then don't worry about it. If you're a sort of 6 to 6, Monday to Friday business, you don't need weekend support, don't pay for weekend support. There might be times of the year when you are able to escalate and grab a bit more, but just see what's available. And outside business hours and emergency contacts, they are critical. They are critical for some companies. So if you are going to have vehicles on the road 24 hours a day, then you need 24-hour access to someone who can say, and we understand what's going on, we can come and fix it. As you step up to more complex physical hardware technology, you're potentially going to need the ability for someone to actually go to a remote vehicle and fix that on the fly. So just ensure that if you don't need it, you don't pay for it. But if you do need it, that it's in there and that you understand what the limitations are, what the additional costs might be, and what the service parameters really are. What does breakdown repair mean? What does instant? What does on-demand mean? Make sure there's definitions of those things and you won't go wrong. So that was tech support and support. Thank you very much again for listening to this one. This is the third last. So after this, we've got costs and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can hit me up at askmarsh.com and I'm happy to do a strategy session with you to talk about what the next steps might be. Talk soon. See ya.